Countdown to the Draft, sponsored by Bell and Health.
225 days and counting when visitors fly into Green Bay in April for the 2025 NFL Draft. One of the first things they're going to see at Austin Strobel International Airport, a few pieces of well-preserved 1919 Packers memorabilia.
The unique display, courtesy of the grandson of a player from the original 1919 team roster and the Neville Public Museum. Tonight, Jamal James hears from that player's family and from travelers about this special piece of Packers history.
My grandfather was an original Packer. I idolized the man, so he was my hero growing up because he was a Packer.
John Desjardins was a farmer and a high school classmate of none other than Curly Lambeau. Impressed by Desjardins' muscular physique, Lambeau recruited him to become the Packers' offensive center and defensive guard. Now these photos of the original roster and Desjardins' game day gear, his helmet, shoulder pads, and cleats are on display at the Austin Strobel International Airport as a permanent installation.
It really does feel like a blast from the past, with one person traveling all the way from Massachusetts saying that it feels like you're walking through part of the Packers Hall of Fame.
Just look at the stuff behind you, right? The old looking cleats and what the helmets used to look like then and how much the game's evolved, and we kind of see the game evolving a little bit the last couple years, like the protective shells and protective caps that are being added to players now. Is that memorabilia that we're going to look back on 100 years from now?
And as Green Bay gets set to write a new page in the history books hosting the 2025 NFL Draft, Desjardins' grandson hopes through this display, visitors will learn and come to appreciate what the Packers mean to those who call Titletown home.
And the community that has always supported the Packers all the way from the beginning through the troubled times that the Packers had, on the edge of disaster financially, and then getting through because people rallied behind the Packers.
In Green Bay, Jamal James, Action 2 News.